Our principal is always inspiring for us to inaugurate the function. And I request you, sir, to inaugurate this function. I also extend all participants, teachers, friends, and students to this function. In this seminar, the Rishikesh is discussing on artificial intelligence, rising importance data in business decision making, and the role of cyber giants, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. And with all your permission, I request our honorable principal to inaugurate this function. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, respected guest of today, Professor Yogesh.
Video cut.
Hello, can I start? Hello,
Sir,
Sir.
hello.
Yes, sir.
I am using.
Sir, കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട് സംസാരിച്ചോളൂ.
Pardon? അങ്ങനെ ഞാൻ രാഘവൻ സാർ
കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്, സംസാരിച്ചോളൂ.
എൻ്റെ തോന്നുന്നു സാറിന് നോക്കാൻ കഴിയില്ല. Can I start?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, audible ആണ്. കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
Yes, good afternoon. Respected guest of today, Professor Rishikesh, and our HOD, Dr. Raghavan sir, my colleagues, students, and all participants. We are blessed to participate in this webinar on post-truth and the rise of GAFAM. Can I pronounce like that? I don't know. Organized by our postgraduate Department of Commerce and Management of Markaz College of Arts and Science in association with IQAC, Internal Quality Assurance Cell. The webinar discusses on the growth of artificial intelligence and the rising importance of data in business decision making, in which the modern platform, different instruments plays a dominant role. You know the importance of
കട്ടാവുന്നുണ്ട്, വോയിസ് കട്ടാവുന്നുണ്ട്.
Hello.
സാർ സംസാരിച്ചോളൂ.
Hello. Can I begin?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Markaz Arts and Science College, for giving me this opportunity Thank you, Dr. Raghavan sir, whom I consider as my mentor, right from my college days. He was my professor. Thank you, sir, for recommending my name for this workshop or this webinar. Thank you, Samir sir. Thank you, principal, who had done the introduction speech, and all those who have worked to make this event possible. Just as the principal had mentioned, the topic that we have chosen for today is hello. Yes, the topic that we have chosen for today is post-truth and the rise of GAFAM. GAFAM. That's the topic. So one of the primary intention behind choosing this topic is, I believe it is important that the truth should prevail. Yeah, truth must prevail. Satyameva Jayate is the fundamental principle on which even our constitution and a lot of values that we uphold is based on this. Yeah. Now, I'm sure this webinar, there are a lot of faculties, there are a lot of students who are coming here with a concrete set of experience. So I'm not a person who has a lot of expertise in this topic, but I have a lot of interest in this topic. What I'm trying to say is, you probably around 75 or 80 people who have joined this event online, the collective wisdom of all those 80 people is much more than probably what little ideas that I'll be sharing with you in the next 1 hour. So you all are coming with a concrete experience. That's the first point. Now, the second thing, what we are trying to do in this probably 1 hour of interaction or discussion is a reflective observation. We're trying to reflect on a topic that we have chosen. The topic is post-truth and the impact of GAFAM or GAFAM. It's actually an abbreviation of Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. What is their role? So we are trying to reflect and observe. Now, what's the third stage of this little interaction? The third stage is to conceptualize certain ideas. We wish to, take back home certain ideas. We wish to conceptualize ideas, and then what we intend is go back and experiment in our own workspaces, in our own classrooms. In the case of faculties, you might be discussing some of the points back in your classroom. In the case of students, you might get some ideas which you can go back and read and understand and try to cross connect with a lot of developments there. So this is what the rough agenda for our discussion is. To share experiences, to think about a topic that we have chosen, conceptualize certain facts, certain ideas, and then go back and experiment. And I think this process continues as and when we organize more webinars, more workshops, this will continue. Thank you once again for the trust and the confidence that you've reposed in me and for giving me this opportunity. So the first thing which I would say is, if you have any questions, I would suggest you to reserve all your questions towards the end of the conversation. We can have around 15 to 20 minutes or even more based on your availability and the time constraints if you have any. I don't mind. I mean, even otherwise, offline also we can extend the conversation. But if you have any questions, please do reserve all your questions towards the end, because sometimes it could happen that during the course of my presentation, some of the topics, some of your questions might get answered on its own, in the course of my. So that's the only request. And okay, let's begin. So the topic that we've chosen is an elephant in the room. What is an elephant in the room? It is a metaphor that we use in English to define a problem which is as big as an elephant. You know that the problem exists, but we don't bother much about it, or we don't discuss much about it. We try to avoid topics for reasons which are probably either people are unaware of the problem, or probably the magnitude of the problem, or because people have not understood the gravity of the problem. So we've taken one such problem for our discussion today. So elephant in the room is actually a metaphor. There is a problem which is prevailing, but normally in our discussions, normally in our boardroom meetings, we don't take up that problem for discussion for some strange reasons. Yeah. So I hope you know this metaphor. So I'm not discussing much about what is elephant in the room. So just to give one line explanation, the elephant in the room is a serious problem people are aware of but don't want to discuss. Yeah. So we have taken one such topic. So the post-truth is actually an elephant in the room, and the rise of GAFAM, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft is also an elephant in the room. And probably towards the end of my presentation, you would understand why I'm considering this topic as an elephant in the room, because this is a topic which I believe needs to be discussed in detail, because there are lots of things which we need to understand, more because this is going to affect our life ahead, not just our personal life but also a professional life. Yes, in so many ways. So how is this GAFAM, how is this post-truth world affecting us, is what we are, I'm attempting to find an answer. Now, the topic, in other words, I would rephrase it. I came across a very interesting book written by Sushana, and the title of the book is Surveillance Capitalism. So after reading the book is when I sort of created an interest in this topic, and I'll discuss more in detail why this book has to be read more. Now, what is surveillance? Surveillance, if I can simply simplify the concept of surveillance, what you like in the social media, what you post in the social media, it can be pictures, your comments, what you share in the social media, what you let's say respond to, like different advertisements come, you might like, dislike, or whatever other smileys that you use. All those information is captured by some or the other data management companies, and which eventually gets used against you. Yeah. So surveillance is about constant monitoring of people online. It can be in Facebook, it can be in Twitter, it can be WhatsApp, it could be any other social, Twitter, YouTube, any platform. What you are doing is being watched by a lot of companies, and those companies collect that huge database to use against you. That's that's how surveillance work. So how does it work? I mean, I'm trying to simplify the concept, because I also understand that a major chunk of the people who have joined online today are students. So I'll try to simplify this concept, going with more of examples, more of quite relatable, daily life experiences which I have had, and some of which I have got to know from my friends, or whoever has given me relatable examples. So what is surveillance? When everything that we do is tracked, is analyzed and monetized, that's in nutshell what surveillance capitalism is, or how surveillance capitalism functions. What you do online, it can be in any platform. When that gets tracked, later what is tracked gets analyzed into data, and when that analysis through that analysis, when it gets monetized, you call it the surveillance capitalism. And the surveillance capitalism is increasing with the predominant role of 5 major companies, which I had mentioned earlier: Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. So there is another way of saying this: extraction, commodification, and control. Some people are extracting data from all of these sources, and the extracted data gets commodified, and then through that commodity they try to control you. Yeah, what they've collected freely, which was available through these platforms, becomes a commodity to control you, control us. Yeah, so that's how the model of surveillance capitalism is. I'll try to make concepts a little more clear. When I go with examples, I'm sure you'll be easily able to relate with. Now, for example, Google knows when you are pregnant before you getting to know about when you're pregnant. Facebook knows that you're getting chums or girls when they get periods much before you yourself biologically realize it. Fitbit knows when you're having sex with or with whom you're having sex. Why? Because Google, Facebook, Fitbit, Twitter, YouTube, or whatever platforms I'm talking about, they are constantly monitoring what you're doing. You know, to which political party you support. Easily you can make out through what you share and like and comment in the social media platforms, Twitter or Facebook. To which restaurants you go through Google Maps, they can easily trace you. Which are the tourist destinations that you go in Instagram, the places that you tag. That is a huge database for the travel agencies or the tourism sector. So anything that you do in the virtual space is a potential data for somebody else. And that data is collected without your knowledge and consent. That is important. These data is collected without your knowledge and consent and gets commodified and gets used against us. Yeah, that's how the surveillance capitalism functions. So intensive data gathering and cross correlation of personal information for behavioral manipulation is what surveillance capitalism is. Yeah. So I started off by mentioning about post-truth, and then I mentioned about 5 companies, and then I introduced a concept called surveillance capitalism, in which I said surveillance is about constant monitoring of what you're doing in the virtual space. And that monitoring helps in collecting a large amount of data through which they correlate and try to influence or sometimes even manipulate your behavioral patterns. Yeah, I'll go with examples. Just give me 1 or 2 more minutes to complete this introduction part, and then I think you'll be able to more relate with what I'm saying. For example, I've got great coffee. If somebody is recommending, when I say somebody in the virtual space is what I'm saying. If you're getting a recommendation, you have a Starbucks nearby and they are offering a discount. It is because Starbucks has already collected your data and what type of coffee you like, and they start recommending you. I'll just quote one example. About 6 or 7 months back, when I was seriously thinking about making an investment in Bangalore, like I wanted to purchase a property in Bangalore. And I asked one of my students, Bharat J. Ambor, I was just having a chat, Facebook chat, through the Facebook Messenger. I was asking, Bharat, can you just help me out? Believe it or not, from that moment onwards, I started getting messages through Facebook. I started seeing messages of real estate investments in Bangalore. I had not informed Facebook that I wanted to invest in a property, but they got to know. How did they get to know? they had tracked my conversation with Bharat J. Ambor. I mean, this is really absurd, but this is happening. Now, I had once made a booking using an online platform. It was a flight booking, and as and when, suppose the booking was for 30th of December 2020. I know this is just a hypothetical date, but this is an actual experience which I'm just kind of paraphrasing just to make you understand. So I made a booking for 30th of December 2020, and I had to travel by flight, and for which before which I had to take a cab or a taxi from the place where I am staying. Like, I stay in the Christ University campus at Bangalore. So as and when the days neared, what happens is I started getting messages from Ola, Uber, and whatever other taxi service was, online taxi service was there at Bangalore. I had not informed Ola and Uber that on 30th I am traveling to Kempegowda airport, but they got to know. How did they get to know? Because the online platform through which I had booked the ticket, they had they did cross-sell the data that this person, Rishikesh, is traveling on such and such date, and you can make him your customer. So without your knowledge, without your consent, a lot of data is getting captured, which eventually comes back to us through our behavioral manipulation. I mean, I'll go with examples a little more. So all of these questions, what you see on screen, even though these are about us, these are not for us, because these are for somebody else. Who are those somebody else? The business organizations who are custom designing their business. I hope you're getting my point. When you get a reminder, you need to pay your gas bill. How did they, let's say if it is through Paytm sends you a reminder. How did Paytm get to know that on such and such date you have to pay your gas bill? Because they have your past history. Previous month or the months before, you had made a payment, and they send you a reminder and make you their loyal customers. So this is how the data is getting captured, and they custom design business, customize marketing, customize advertisements, customize their promotion. Now I'll go with more examples. So my point here is, anything that you get to see, get to experience online as free. What are those free services? Google is a free service. We don't pay for it. Facebook is a free service. We don't pay for it. WhatsApp is a free service. Instagram is a free. Anything that you get to experience online for free is at a cost. And that cost is your privacy. And that cost is a lot of other things which I'll discuss in the course of our. So there are two kinds of business model. One is a free service model. Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram. The other is fee for service. They charge fee for the service that they render, but even that data gets used against you. Uber, Spotify, Swiggy, Netflix, Amazon Prime, they're all using the data to customize their business. Okay. Now, this, I hope you have got a broad context of what topic we have chosen. The topic that we have chosen is the post-truth world, in which surveillance, the word surveillance is important, and the rise of capitalism, surveillance capitalism. This term surveillance is coined by a Harvard professor, a lady. She retired, but she still continues as a professor emeritus. Now, she has referred to this data collection in the virtual space as Google. I mean, she was quoting Google and Facebook. Google and Facebook are like elephant poachers, and our personal data are the ivory tusk. Google and Facebook are elephant poachers, and personal data is the ivory tusk. And what is the money? What is the profit that they make out of the data that they collect known as? It is known as surveillance dividend. The profiteering by personal information packaged into data sets which are sold to third parties, that whole process is what surveillance capitalism has, or what has led the rise of surveillance capitalism, and the profit is otherwise known as surveillance dividend. All right. Now, I mentioned about a few examples of our personal data being collected, but where are these data collected being stored? You get these data in the internet about my age, my gender, where I work, whether I'm married or single, whether what my educational qualification is, what my interests are, which restaurants I go, which food I like, what are my travel plans, yeah, from which let's say market I buy products. Everything is getting captured without your knowledge or consent. But where are these data being kept? Where are this data being stored? Now, in the virtual space, there are three web. One is the World Wide Web, which is the internet space, which constitutes only 4% of the internet content. So what is visible outside is only just 4%. There is something much deeper called deep web, which constitutes 90% of the internet content. So that is where most of these data which they've collected are stored. It includes government resources, academic informations, medical record, maybe our subscriptions, subscription to Amazon, subscription to so many other virtual services. So all the data collected is stored in the deep web. But even beneath that, there is another web called the dark web. Now, what is dark web? That constitutes the rest 6% of the internet content. And that is where the stolen data, the illegal data, sometimes pornography, drug trafficking, and so many other illicit and illegal practices do happen in the dark web. So my point is, whatever we see in the form of internet is only just a tip of an iceberg. Just 4% is visible for people like us. 90% of the data collected is there in the deep web, and the remaining, sometimes even more confidential information, sometimes illicit or let's say illegal information are there in the dark web, which constitutes the 6%. So that's where any company can purchase, say for instance, a travel agency. They wanted to know the travel plans of people at Bangalore or at Kerala. What they could do is collect all of these information from of the people residing in that locality from the deep web, and they can customize and design messages which goes only for that person. For example, I frequently go to places like Goa, or sometimes I'm more frequent to the Northeast. So they know this is a place where I like going off and on. So I'll be getting messages of the restaurants there, of the travel destinations there, or any other thing that they wish to promote to these online platforms. That's how customization happens. It's more of customization and personalization. I hope you're getting my point. So we are living in a world where they know everything about us, but we don't know anything about them. We don't know much about them. When I say them, what I mentioned, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft, they are the major players, of course, but there are other players too. Who are they? Who are those who are spying us? Who are those who are doing this bamboozlement? Bamboozlement means cheating. Or so the point here is there is a lot of information asymmetry in what we know about them and what they know about us. Yeah. So that's how the capitalism, the surveillance capitalism is designed. Now, this is a very interesting and a very sarcastic way of presenting. Suppose by 2021, if Google decides to go for a hiring, it might happen that Google advertises that you don't need to apply to Google because we already have all your information. Google is actually doing that. You know, this is a very sarcastic way of presenting. We are now hiring. You don't need to apply because we already have all your information, our marks, our age, our gender, where we are born, our work experience, everything might probably be there with them already. I hope, yeah, you got the fun part of it. So I'll just quote one or two experiments of Google, how they are collecting data. The Google Map, Google Street View, and Google Glass. It was one of the most conspicuous, I would say, experiment on surveillance. Whoever uses Google Map, Google knows where all that person goes, with whom that person goes, because if that person's mobile is also connected with this Google Map, they can easily track how many people, where all, which restaurants, which hotel, or which places are you going, what you buy, from where do you buy, how do you make the payment if everything is virtual. So they have all that huge database with them. Same thing is likely to happen when this Google Glass gets commercialized. I hope you know the application of Google Glass, what a Google Glass is. So this is one experiment of surveillance. I hope by now you've understood what surveillance means. Surveillance is all about constant monitoring of people, what they're doing in the virtual space. And that what they are doing is a huge database for Google, which they collect, and sometimes they themselves utilize it, or they might cross-sell it to some other third party through which they make money. I hope you're getting the whole broader picture of how the surveillance happen and how the surveillance capitalism is gaining more and more dominance. Another experiment, maybe 1 or 2 years back, this was quite popular, Pokemon. It's an augmented reality game which was developed by Niantic Labs, but Niantic Lab was actually under Google. Yeah, they came up with this game, and if you remember, it's an augmented AI related game wherein where you go, it's more about those of you who've played this game would know how you have to move around. Yeah. So what happened is a lot of restaurants, they started paying this Niantic Labs, and they said, in this game, you make our restaurant as one of the destination. So what happens is a lot of restaurants made were embedded as part of this game, which increased the footfall in those restaurants, which increased the footfall in the bar or maybe some retail store. Yeah, they all started paying. So that was a great source of income. That was a great source of revenue for Niantic Labs, which eventually went to Google. So Google is trying so many such things which, without our knowledge, without our consent, they are tracking us, they are collecting a lot of data, and they are actually playing with our emotions. So I hope you're getting this. Google Street View is one example of surveillance. Google Glass, once it gets commercialized, becomes another example of surveillance. Pokemon Go was a classic case of an experiment on how to herd people, how to mobilize people in a particular locality through which they could make money. Yeah, because as I said, restaurants started paying to Niantic, requesting the labs to make their restaurant one of the destinations as part of this game. So it was embedded as part of this game. I hope you're also understanding the revenue model of this surveillance. So that's more about the commercial side of it. But there are other social consequences too. All what I was talking about was the economic part of it, how people are making money. But there are other social consequences, political consequences, which legal consequences. Yeah, so many things that we need to discuss under this surveillance. Now, these are some of the cliches that we have been believing in. Customer is always right. Customer is a king. We learned this in marketing. Customer is a king. And then in democracy, we say voters know the best. But is it actually the voters who, uh, what they vote is what gets the people getting elected? Or are the customers making their choices, or is there somebody else making a choice for them? So these are questions which probably in the course of our discussion I'll try to explain with examples. So my point here is free will or independent thinking or liberal democracy, everything is becoming a myth. Majority of the people, even during 2016 election, had not actually wanted Donald Trump as their president, but he got elected. How? With the help of technology. I'll explain the entire process of that presidential election and how technology was used in democracy, in dissuading people, persuading to a large extent. Now, it is in this context that we need to discuss this topic, surveillance capitalism. I spoke about the commercial consequences. People are making money, minting money out of surveillance. A lot of organizations are doing it. Second, there are social consequences, economic consequences, political consequences are there, technological, legal consequences. Everything we need to understand, at least a little bit of each of these, so that it triggers more of interest in you to go back and read further and understand, right? Okay, so there is this lady called, this is the author which I was mentioning, Shoshana Zuboff, an American author and a sociologist. She's a Harvard professor. She said when she wrote this book, Surveillance Capitalism, she was comparing her points of view with what Karl Marx had visualized about capitalism itself. If capitalism is a vampire for the labor, in surveillance is like a vampire, not just for labor, but also for every aspect of human experience. The way we think, what we eat, which places we should go, which courses we should take, everything is getting decided by somebody else. We are getting influenced, manipulated, yeah, by somebody else. Who is this somebody else? That's what she tries to, and how do they do it? That's what she tries to narrate with a brilliant examples, with brilliant theory behind it. And that's what we'll try to understand. All right. So let me now go only with examples, probably around 25-30 examples I've brought in, so that this concept becomes clear, this concept becomes easier for you to comprehend. Now let me go with the first example. I said the 2016 presidential election, it was won using technology. There is this company called Cambridge Analytica, which collects huge data of people, and they use that data to influence the voting pattern. So what Cambridge Analytica had done is they collected the data of 40 million US citizens in 2016. And how did they do it? They created a game, and this game was a personality test. I hope in Facebook a lot of games appear. How will you look when you grow old? You can upload your image, and then that image, and or what will be your personality in 2021, and then a word would pop up. Or probably some other games are like what will be the first letter of your girlfriend or boyfriend. You have to enter certain details and then something. So these are all, when you play these games, you need to be really careful. Even that these are not genuine, but we end up playing them. So something similar is what Cambridge Analytica did. They created a personality test. In fact, some of them were even paid to play this game. They were paid around $2 to $5. The US citizens were paid so much of money, and they made them play this personality test game. And what eventually Cambridge Analytica did is, while they had to play, the users had to give access to their personal data, which they had shared in the Facebook. So they cross-connected these two and tried to understand the thinking pattern of each of these 40 million people in US. Which political party do they have a stronghold, or an ideology do they believe in? What are the things? So everything. So I'll just explain the whole process. So this is, as I said, the Cambridge Analytica. The purpose is use large-scale data analysis to change audience behavior. You just need to read that mission statement. So this is what they have done in 2016 election, and they've done that in UK Brexit as well. Now, this is how they did it. The first stage is around 40 million people. They were paid around $2 to $5 to take a detailed personality test. That's the first step. Second is, the app also collected the likes, dislikes, personal information of all those people. Now, in the third stage, the personality quiz results were paired with their Facebook data, like what they like. Yeah. So what they were trying to do is trying to understand the psychological pattern. How are these people thinking? To which person would they vote? And that's what and then the fourth is they designed algorithms combined with the data and to create a superior set of records of people. And these individuals were then sent targeted messages, highly personalized messages. Like each of those people were sent messages against the presidential candidate, the opposition candidate. Like in 2016, it was Hillary Clinton. Yeah. So the messages were character assassinating Hillary Clinton. There were a lot of fake news. There was a lot of propaganda, and it actually influenced the voting pattern of people in US. And eventually, he got elected as the president of United States of America, and the rest is history. Now, it was not just the people who were active in the Facebook. That's something more critical. If I have a Facebook account, but I have 10 friends who doesn't have a Facebook account, their data can also be collected, because they might be sharing some details with you, and with those details, this Cambridge Analytica can predict even their thinking pattern, and that's called shadow profiling. They did shadow profiling too, which made that 40 million 50 million people. 50 million people in the United States of America, their thought process were entirely brainwashed by a company. and they elected, which influenced their voting pattern, and they elected Donald Trump. So my point is, the consent of the people in 2016 presidential election was actually manufactured. They had manufactured the consent of people, and this is someone has to. Okay, thank you. So I hope you're getting the whole concept of what I'm trying to explain. The consent of the people were actually manufactured in the 2016 presidential election, and therefore it becomes quite relevant to what Noam Chomsky had long before in 1978, if I'm not wrong. He had predicted, he had written this book, Manufacturing Consent, and it actually became a reality. Now, anybody knows, I'm going with the second example. How many of you know the Oxford Word of the Year in 2016? Now, Oxford, every year they would come with a new word. Yeah. So, for example, it was smiley. I think in 2014 or 15 it was smiley. That was a new word. So the 2016 word of the year was post-truth. Now, what is post-truth? What you believe to be the truth may not necessarily be the truth. I'll relate with the earlier example. Trump got elected as a post-truth, but actually the truth is he was not the one who was supposed to be elected. I hope you're getting my point. Yeah, we are therefore living in a post-truth world. Whatever we believe in to be truth may not necessarily be the truth. Yeah. So I hope I'm slowly and gradually getting into the topic. So the title was Post-Truth and the Rise of GAFAM. By now, I hope you have understood what is post-truth. We are currently living in a world and in an era of post-truth. Now, let me now take you back to a bit of a history. Now, 6th of August 1991 has a historical importance for all of us. Because it is on 6th of August 1991 that internet had become accessible for all of us, like for you and me. Till then it was only used by the army. US Army was mostly for their internal communication they were using, but post 6th of August 1991 I could, you could, everybody could access internet. Now, after that, what happens is an information explosion. You have so many platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, social media, blogs, Skype, WhatsApp. Imagination is probably the only limit. So there has been an information explosion, and there has been an explosion in the number of platforms through which you could stay updated, you could get information. But what eventually has all this led to is, has it, I mean, one of the questions that we all need to ask is, has it actually invaded into our privacy? Imagine a Siri or an Alexa placed in our bedroom. The Siri and Alexa is actually invading into our privacy. I hope you know what a Siri and Alexa is. Yeah. So those devices, even in our bedroom, we have started placing, which I believe is a very, so this is what a statement which I came across and I wish to share. My wife asked me why I so spoke so softly. I said, I'm afraid Mark Zuckerberg is listening. She laughed, I laughed, Alexa laughed, Siri laughed. It's a very satirical, a very sarcastic way of presenting, but it points at a reality that even our personal life, there's no personal life. I mean, in fact, Mark Zuckerberg had said that um, when you are virtual, when you are in the online space, you are literally stripped naked. You cannot hide anything when you go online. Yeah. And James Franco also validates the statement. Now, the point is, from 6th of August 1991 to, let's say, 22nd of December 2020, a lot of things have changed. Technology, you just can't imagine a day without Google. Google was shut for almost 45 minutes. Just imagine about 3 or 4 days back, and the kind of havoc that it all created in all our life. For almost 45 minutes, the world was on a standstill. We are dependent a lot on technology today, and technology is actually collecting and manipulating a lot of our data through multiple sources. So that has been the major shift from, I'm so sorry, 6th of August to the current day. Now, I read an article in the Time magazine. The title is Never Offline. And this magazine says our generation, that is the people who are alive in 2020, would be the last generation to have experienced what is offline. I hope you're understanding what I'm trying to say. Everyone born hereafter would have experienced only what is online. In Sweden, in 2015, when a newborn baby, when a baby is born, they had given an option to embed a chip in their body. Means they would insert a chip in the body, which can be a substitute for different cards that we are using. What are those cards? PAN card, Aadhaar card, or driving license, credit card, debit card, which means every newborn baby would be a half human and half technology. I mean, you can Google search, go back and read and understand. This happened in Sweden, and a small city in Australia had also, in fact, I think they made it mandatory that this chip has to be embedded in the body. So what I'm trying to say is, ours would be the generation to have experienced what is on offline. Last generation. Whoever is born hereafter would have experienced only online. 24/7 we will be online. Yeah. So we'll be the last generation that exists un-augmented. You know what is un-augmented? I spoke about this Pokemon Go. That's an augmented reality game. What is an augmented world? Where our generation has already become that. The second image. Almost out of 24 hours, maybe except the time that we are sleeping, we have one gadget as part of our body. I'm referring to the mobile phone. Yeah, mobile phone has become an extended part of our body. What is likely to happen is, the third image, if you see, there is a chip embedded in his body. You have a Google Glass wearing, and in the fourth image thing, that is the progress of technology. So possibilities of data collection, possibility of data manipulation by the big giants are increasing, because we are heading towards an augmented world. We are heading towards a fully 24/7 online world. Then the generations to come would have not experienced what is offline. All right. Now, let me quote a few more examples. Data is collected from almost everything and from everywhere. Cloud is serving almost everything and everywhere. Like for instance, in US, doctors are losing the job. Why? Because you enter your problem, the cloud server gives you a prescription. Lawyers are losing their job. Why? You enter your legal issues, the cloud server would give you the advice. Accountants are losing their job because 1,000 times more precise decisions are made by the cloud server and the data analytics. Investors, market investors, there is a AI integrated technology called Numerai. They are making precise investment decisions 10 times better than, in fact, the surgery is done by technology. So the point is, data is there, everything. Cloud is serving almost everything. Every gadget is becoming smart. Your mobile, your watch, your kitchen is becoming smart. Your television has become smart. Your refrigerator has become smart. Everything is getting connected. Everything can be computed. You could make everything. I hope you are aware that an entire building in the Middle East was 3D printed. So you could make anything. You can 3D print your internal organs. You could 3D print your heart. You could 3D print your lungs, your kidney. Anything is possible. Now you could make anything, transact anything, see anything. So there is hardly a profession or a job or a thing in which the data is not collected or the data cannot be applied. Say it be politics, say it be writing, say it be programming, financial services, legal services, doctor's job, physicians, playing, call center jobs. Call centers are automated. I hope you're aware that in China, the news anchor was replaced with a robot. In fact, in Saudi Arabia, they had given citizenship to a robot called Sophia. So what I'm trying to say is technology is slowly and gradually coming in, and in which the data collection is also happening across the fields. And how is this data collection happening? That's what I think I need to elaborate a little more. So this, as I said, the major players in this segment are Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple. Now, another way of explaining it is that software is in fact eating the world. In fact, they are cheating the world. Because, see, every sector has now become a software company. Education is now a software company, Byju's. Yeah? There's so many other competitors which is now coming up. Now, doctors, there are IBM Watson. They are replacing doctors. In fact, there is a school in Bangalore called Indus International School. They bought 3 robots and they replaced teachers. Now, robots have started teaching. Yeah. So every job would be done by the software, would be done by technology. Software is actually cheating and eating the world, and that's what Mark Anderson had said. He's from Netscape, the founder of Netscape. He says software is eating the world in all sectors. In the future, every company therefore would be a software company. Now, for which what they need is data. Yeah. Now, that's the important thing. Data is the new oil and analytics is the combustion engine. Earlier, it was the oil itself, but now the data is the new lubricant, universal lubricant that runs all the organization. Now, I'll skip quite a few. Now, let me go with more examples. Now, there is this shopping mall example, which I wish to quote as the third example. So there is an unwed mother who sends her 14 or 15-year-old daughter to do shopping using the loyalty card. I hope you know what a loyalty card is. In a supermarket, you get a loyalty card. For every additional purchase, you get a discount. So she sends this 14-year-old daughter, and she does shopping and comes back, and later after almost 6 or 7 months, the mother gets a letter from the shopping mall. Congratulations that your daughter has conceived, or congratulations that your daughter is pregnant. We have these products which can be delivered at your doorstep. Yeah. This lady was annoyed. This lady decided to go to court, and her legal advisor said, "Madam, you have to produce certificate of evidence. Now, before which you need to do a medical checkup." And in the medical checkup, to her surprise, her 14-year-old daughter was actually pregnant. But that's not the question. How did the supermarket get to know? Which is that supermarket? Target. How Target figured out a teen girl was pregnant before her father did, before her mother did. And this was, I mean, I'm not just cooking up stories. This is a 2012, an actual incident. How did they get to know? They had installed a scanner in the supermarket which collects the data of every person who comes to that supermarket. And that data is used to customize their business. Yeah, so everyone is targeted. That's the third example. And what is again important is without your knowledge, without your consent. Yeah, third example. Now the fourth example. Now, I have one of my friend who was walking near a bookstore. Yeah. So I was having a conversation with one of my friend who was walking near a bookstore, and she said, I started getting messages about a book which I had searched almost 6 months before in Google. Yeah, she wanted to buy, let's say, XYZ book, and she had searched for that book in Google. And while she was walking through, I mean, she was in the road and she was walking through this bookstore. The bookstore sends her a message. How did the bookstore get to know that this girl wanted to buy that book? They had got that information from Google. Google search which this girl had done, that data was sold to this bookstore. I hope you are able to relate. So that's the amount of data collection which is happening. These are all real incidents. I'm not cooking up story. These are real incidents, people sharing experiences. Now, what about free Wi-Fi? Go to any airport. I think it was Starbucks who had started this concept of free Wi-Fi. But there, the only problem is the privacy issue. There's no, they would say that whatever you're doing is at your risk. Yeah, they would hack your contact list. They would hack all the details in your mobile. This is happening in several places. MACD, they do it. In Starbucks, they're doing it. So that's the fifth example. Now, Ola. I had a conversation with one of my students who is now working with Ola. He's a manager, and he left Ola, sorry. And he was saying, sir, we don't give discount coupons for regular customers. We don't give discount coupons for what we are giving is, what we are targeting is non-regular customers. But how did Ola get to know who are regular and who are non-regular? Based on their travel history. Travel history of all the people who've traveled or utilized Ola services is there in their cloud server. They categorized, they segmented, they bifurcated the data of who are loyal. Because if the people are loyal, you need not do repeated advertisement to them. So the Ola has now started giving discounts for only non-regular customers to convert them into regular customers. That's the amount of data. I mean, that's how they are using the data to customize their business. I hope you are getting the the importance of data in business decision making, or how the data is collected and how it is used against people. Now, when I'm sure at least some of you might be using Amazon Music or Ghana or Spotify, how do they know which genre of music you like? See, I frequently listen to Kishore Kumar, and there are certain musicians, there are certain genre of music which I frequently listen. Whenever a new album gets released, they would suggest and recommend that to me. How do they know which I know? I mean, I like, because they have the search history of what I listen off and on, what I listen repeatedly. So it's not just in one platform, it is almost in every platform. That, I mean, same thing happens with Amazon, same thing happens with Netflix. Based on your search history, they give you recommendations. Yeah. Now, the ninth one is about Swiggy. I do have this habit of buying biryani online once a while. And while I walk, I mean, there is a place called Koramangala, which is close to our campus. That's a sort of business hub. So when I walk, if I had kept my navigation on, and when I walk through Koramangala, Swiggy would start giving suggestions. This is a restaurant where you get this. This is a restaurant place. I mean, how do they know? Because they know what I order frequently and from where do I order those food frequently. So there is customer tracking, and the algorithm-driven suggestions comes through these platforms as well, the food delivery platforms as well. So I hope by now you are getting a feel of what surveillance is, how surveillance collected data gets used in business decision making, and how they get targeted advertisements, that it leads to targeted advertisements and customer acquisition. Now, the 10th example is about payment gateways. There again, if you've bought a flight ticket online through Paytm or any other platforms, I mean, you're sure, be rest assured that that data gets sold to Ola or Uber. They would do that. I mean, that cross-selling of data is happening. Now, what about these Amazon, eBay? These are all online e-commerce portals. There again, the same thing happens. Yeah, but having said all this, one of the major problem with most of us is, in Amazon, there is an option to switch off our search history. But how many of us do that? I mean, that's the important question. I've been talking only negatives about most of these platforms, but one of the positive that, one of the things that we need to be careful about is to point fingers at ourselves, because a lot of things gets revealed, gets stolen because we become irresponsible. There are options to switch off. Yeah, so I'll come to it later, but again, in job portals like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Job Rapido, Times Job, these are places where you update all your achievements, all your academic credentials, and I'm told to get a job, we would update anything they would ask for, but those data are also getting cross-sold to the people who actually would need those information. Yeah, so cross-selling of data is also happening in the online platform. I mean, FaceApp, I'm sure at least some of you might have experimented with this. In fact, before knowing about all this, in fact, I had also tried this, but then it is said that your face has got multiple muscles, and these muscle, the way it reacts to or responds to, also gives a cue of what personality that person has, or how that person thinks, how quickly a person responds. I'm guessing, I'm not very sure, but FaceApp is collecting a lot of images which can at some point be used against us in some of the other ways. So in short, what I was trying to with the examples quoted, so far I've quoted, what I was trying to explain is surveillance capitalism. I started off with the example of post-truth, and then I spoke about how companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, some of those companies are collecting data. Then I came with examples which from my personal life, a lot of relatable examples, at least some of which I'm sure you would be able to relate with. And now I'm talking something more serious is about the surveillance capitalism. Now, what is surveillance capitalism? Surveillance capitalism primarily drives on the principle that the data never sleeps. Yeah, the data is available 24/7 if a person has a virtual presence. If you're wearing a Fitbit and you're sleeping, the amount of sleep, or your heartbeat, your blood pressure, your pulse rate, those are all data collected which can be useful for, let's say, hospital sector. Yeah, it is happening. Of course, it all brings in convenience, but at the same time, what happens at the back end is something else. Now, the entire surveillance capitalism works on three principles. One, economies of scale, more quality of data, more better predictions. Yeah. The second principle is about economies of scope, more variety of data. It can be my photograph, my video, my signature, my travel plans, my online transaction details, anything. More varied the data, higher the prediction value. That's the second principle of surveillance capitalism. The first is more quality. Second is more about more variety of data. The third is economies of action, modification of behavior to desired commercial outcome. Now, based on the data collected, if you are able to convert a person's behavior, I mean, you have succeeded. I said Ola and Uber had started giving recommendations to me. If I have chosen Ola to travel, the surveillance had happened. Surveillance dividend they have made already. I hope these examples are making the concepts more clear. So it's about quality, variety, and modification of somebody's behavior. If you're able to influence, the better word would be manipulate the behavior, I think surveillance capitalism has succeeded, right? Okay, so I'll skip quite a few slides here because I need to discuss more important ones and take few questions. And these are all examples where companies like Coca-Cola, they are doing it, Netflix is doing, this bank based out of Singapore is doing, Amazon has done, Pepsi, every company is doing this data collection and data maneuvering, data manipulation, I don't know, whatever verbs or adjectives you could use. They are doing it. So, and there's this person called Peter Novick. He's the director of research at Google. He says, we don't have better algorithms. All what we have is more of data. If Google is having a predominant role in surveillance capitalism, it's primarily because Google is a search engine where we end up searching almost everything, and that what we search is a potential database to understand who we are and how we behave, how we predict, how we make decisions. Yeah, so they have all our data. Now, eventually what has happened is almost everything in our society has been quantified. We have become a quantified society. The number of people eating beef, the number of people eating chicken, number of people eating those who are veggies, or number of people who are Christians, Islam, Hindu. You can easily quantify it. In fact, there was a very scary news, if you remember, a particular community could be targeted with an artificial intelligence developed by Alibaba group. I mean, I'll come to that example later. I mean, that's the level of data the AI, or let's say the technology, can collect and used against. Now, what has happened amidst all this is the privacy of our life, the anonymity of our life has become a myth. There is no privacy even in our bedroom, isn't it? Like Alexa and Siri is there on a voice command, and whatever we do there, they have an access to it unless and until we switch off. So privacy and anonymity has become a myth. On top of it, the authenticity of the data that we get is also under a big question mark. Because the data that you got, the data almost 40 million people in the US got in 2016 presidential elections were manipulated. So privacy is a myth. Independent decisions is a myth. Free will is a myth. Authenticity of data is a myth. There are lots of fake news, propaganda, which is also happening in the cyber physical space. So now, whatever I have spoken till now, I'm sure most of you were already aware of. It is not that you're not aware of, but we still continue sharing, liking, commenting, searching, not switching off our navigation. We continue doing our online practices, and that is what you call the privacy paradox. See, there is a discrepancy between individuals' intention to protect their privacy and how they actually behave in the online market space. It is not that we are not aware of these things. We are aware, but we continue doing what we're doing in the cyber physical spaces. Yeah. So there was a study way back in 2007 done by Norberg and Horn, and it says 54% of the internet users believe that the website that tracked their behavior invaded into their privacy. Yeah, they are aware, 54% of the people, but 64% of them would offer personal information to access a website. They're willing to offer. So that discrepancy is what you call, with the intentions to disclose personal information is what you call the privacy paradox. I hope there too you're able to relate with. We know that the data is getting collected. We know that Google is no more a search engine. Google is no more democratic. It is, they are doing surveillance business, but we still continue doing it. Now, that's mostly the commercial part of it. I think until now I was discussing, I'll take another 15 minutes and then wind up, take a few questions if there are any, and then if there are any other formalities to finish, we'll do that. Now, till now I was talking only about the commercial part of it, how business is done. Now, one of the most important and frightening thing is about the politics of it. Digital, what we're doing digital is also becoming political. This is the example which I was quoting. China's Alibaba pushed software that identifies Uyghurs. So this is one community. This AI integrated software can identify one community. Yeah, Muslim minorities. Now, is that how the data manipulation has to be used, or the technology has to be? That's a bit question mark. I mean, I'm talking about the political side of it. I'll quote a few relatable and recent examples with which I think you will get a bigger picture. Now, I hope you remember this Ujjwala gas connection project of the current government, through which the women, every household, were given gas connection, and while getting the gas connection, they got a personal letter from the Prime Minister with his photograph. It's a very classic case of branding, self-branding. You're giving a government service connection to the household. I think almost 20 crore people had got this, or 2 crore, I'm sorry, people had benefited this Ujjwala gas connection project. Now, what happens is, along with that, our Aadhaar card details were also to be submitted. But later, there is a twist and an anticlimax to this. There's this company called Jarvis, just like Cambridge Analytica. There is this company called Jarvis, to which all the data that they had collected as part of the Ujjwala gas connection was shared. Jarvis is a private company. And what is their task? Before the election, the Jarvis consultancy would call the household or all these women who had got the Ujjwala gas connection to remind that you've got connection because of a person, because of a. So the personal details of citizens collected by the government is handed over to the private consultancy service. What transparency is there? I mean, I'm slowly and gradually getting into the invasion of misuse of data in the whole process of democracy. Now, I'll quote a little more relatable example. I'm sure most of you would have got this kit from the state government or central, I don't know, through the public distribution system, through the ration shop during this pandemic. Now, here you have a system where you have to give your thumb impression to get your the ration kit. Yeah, that's one thing. Now, how do you unlock your phone? That is also using your thumb impression. What is the connection here? In a public distribution, which is a let's say a government agency, the ration shop is a government agency, uses your thumb impression. The same thumb impression is what you use to unlock your phone. What is the connection here? Your Aadhaar card. Aadhaar card has the details of all the citizens of this country. How safe is the data that gets? I mean, there is huge potential of data being manipulated and misused in this whole process, not just in US, how it happened in 2016 election, even here. I'm bringing your attention to something a little more serious. In another example, 2019 election, there's this software developer called Devesh Kumar. He did profile search of people in Twitter and Facebook, and he found that 89% of the accounts created in 2013, between June and 2014 Lok Sabha election, were fake. And all of these 89% of the accounts that were created were spreading fake news and propaganda against one targeted community. Yeah? Targeted misinformation. So the data can be manipulated by the not just by the corporates, but also by those in power. I'm talking about the governments. A survey conducted by the Social Media Matters Institute for Governance, they published their report in 2019. They found that 50% of the Indian population had received fake news. 50%. Through the WhatsApp, through Facebook, through Twitter. 50% of the data where, earlier a report says 89% of the accounts created, newly created, were fake, propagating fake news. Here it says 50% of the people in India who are into cyber-physical spaces during the 2019 Lok Sabha election had received fake news, which means manipulation is possible using fake news, propaganda, setting up wrong narratives. targeted misinformation, which is done to a large extent by the political parties as well. People in power are also using. So whom do we rely on? Of course, commercial objectives are of course, a part of the rise of surveillance capitalism. But on the other side, the government organizations are also doing and manipulating. Now, just think about another recent case. I hope you know about the fake TRP case, which was registered about 2 months back, for which, I mean, that's not for which he went to jail, but for some other reason. Now, what is this whole TRP? There is this television rating points. You know, the larger the television rating point, the higher the possibility of your bargaining power in advertisements. When you have a high TRP point, you can set your let's say the advertisement cost is more. I mean, you could charge more from those who are asking for advertisement. So what this person, the entire television channel has done is they assigned a private agency, and that private agency went to different people across Mumbai, and they were paid just to switch on this television, so that in the TRP rating, it so appears that many people are watching this channel, and majority of those people who were watching weren't even educated. They were just paid to watch this channel, which means, again, the data there also can be manipulated if by people in the media as well. So initially we were talking about corporates, then we spoke about the government, how they're using it. Now we're talking about the media. Now, another thing which, before I conclude, I just have another 5 or 10 more minutes to wind up. These are the big five giants who are setting parallel narratives, who are the major players in the surveillance capitalism. Now, who are they? The first one is Sergey Brin, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, which is of Google. Then you have Bill Gates, then Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, and also the man behind Amazon. Yeah. So these are the major five giants who have, and these five are known as GAFAM, which is Google, Apple, Facebook. Their revenue, even during this pandemic, has hardly affected. They've had a good time even during this crisis. In fact, they had a better time. And I am skipping quite a few examples, but maybe this one last example, and then I'll end with 2 slides. Now, I hope you are aware that I know I spoke about the netizens, and I'm a little bit talking about the citizens. In China, Google is not available. Yeah, they've blocked. There's no entry for Google. But China is actually a country which is practicing surveillance. In China, there is something called social credit. Now, what is social credit? The movements of each and every citizen is closely watched by the people in power, using the CC cameras, using different surveillance mechanism. And based on their social behavior, if they are violating their the traffic rules, they have a negative point. If they are not taking care of their parents, they have a negative point. If there are penalties for every wrongdoing. And how are these penalties imposed? By setting up CC cameras at almost all the places. Yeah, so it's like a balance sheet of your life. Balance sheet of every year, you get a social credit, and more you've done for the society without violating their rules, the more your social credit is. But this happens through constant surveillance. Yeah. Now, This is how it is. Like if you're donating blood, you get rewards. If you're helping the poor, you get rewards. If you're engaging in a charity work, you get rewards. On the right side, if you're engaged in punishments, cheating in online games, not visiting your aging parents. How does this get monitored? That's the most important thing. In a way, you would find it's about surveillance. You're constantly being, nobody goes and reports, but you're being constantly monitored. Now, what I'm trying to say is, in the West, there is much talk about GAFAM, which is Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. Little about BATX. In China, there is much talk about BATX, but little about GAFAM. Now, what are those BATX? Again, 4 companies: Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and Xiaomi. So, no matter whether it's a communist country or a capitalist country or a socialist country, surveillance is happening at the level of corporates, at the level of organizations, at the level of the people in power, by the media. It's happening, and data collection is happening, data manipulation is also happening. And in China, in a communist country, you have the parallel that you could draw is BATX. Yeah. Similarly, the newly spoken is Netflix, Airbnb, Tesla, and Uber, which is called NATO. Yeah. So there are different groups who are consolidating their power, consolidating their authority on the people, and becoming more and more, pro-capitalist. So I'll skip a few more. But is there anything that we could do? That's the most important question with which I'll wind up. I'll just take another 2 or 3 more minutes. How do we regain our free will? Now, there are 3 ways. One is, you need to educate people about all this. In fact, I hope you're aware that in US, there was a delete Facebook movement, wherein a lot of people, a lot of youth had deleted their Facebook, because after especially the Cambridge Analytica issue in 2016, it was because they got to know what these people are doing, what Google is doing, what Facebook is doing, what other online platforms are doing. They believe, majority have started, of the youth, I'm saying, have started doing real cash transactions, not virtual cash, credit or debit cards. Yeah. So education is one thing. Important that to understand how these are funded, and second aspect is regulation. You need, for which the government only can do such a regulation. In fact, in Europe, they had come with a regulation that without the consent of the people, no company can take the personal data. Do we have a regulation in India like that? That's what I'll wind up with. The third is resistance. So as I said, delete Facebook movement or anti-surveillance campaign. So those are the 3 ways in which surveillance capitalism anyways is a reality, and it is happening. And I would say the 3 alternative options to counter it is through educating more and more people about it, framing regulations, and also resistance, all of which are mutually supporting. So those are the few points which I wish to, there are so many other things which I can discuss, but because of paucity of time, okay, let me also just mention, because these 5 companies have a predominant role in data collection and manipulation, in cross-selling and so many other things which happens, they are also referred to by the UK government as the digital gangsters. They are working as gangsters. They are more powerful than sometimes even some of the governments in power. These private companies, these multinational companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft are actually more powerful. So this is my last slide, and then I'll take a few questions. Now, what are the issues in surveillance capitalism? What are the issues of post-truth world? What are the issues of GAFAM and a lot of other companies having a dominance? Number one is I'm sure by now you would have understood it is actually a threat to our privacy and human dignity. A lot of our decisions are not actually made by us. A lot of our decisions are made by, see, there is a person who did a survey and asked people in 4 different continents to search on a topic. Those 4 people started getting 4 different results. All 4 of them were searching in Google itself, but all 4 started. How can this be possible? You're searching the same topic, but you end up getting 4 different results. So it's, what I'm trying to say is Google is no more transparent or democratic as we think it is, or as we think they're supposed to be. So it's actually a threat on privacy and human dignity. Overuse of all of these gadgets is leading to consumerism. It is actually supporting corporates and the state. When I say state, it is the government or people in power than individuals. That's why I said they are using our data, but it's not for us, it is for them. It is a threat to democracy, and manipulations can happen. And it also, I mean, this is another worst thing that we need to look at. The concentration of wealth is getting confined to very few people. Yeah, 3 or 4 companies. Knowledge, power, wealth, everything gets concentrated to very few people. So that's the there are enough and more that we can discuss, but I don't wish to. But what I would suggest is a couple of books before I wind up. One book is Intellectual Privacy by Neil Richards. If you're interested in this topic, you go back and read. It's a brilliant book on how important it is to defend our privacy. There is another 21 Lessons for the Century, for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari. Another classic masterpiece on how the world is changing and how the privacy is becoming a myth, with a lot of examples, and the importance of forming networks. The Rise of Network Society by Manuel Castells. And the last one I would say is to read The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff herself. You need to read this book, without which you won't understand. I mean, I've tried to make the concept simple. Since there are so many students, I thought examples would make it more relatable. So that's it from my side. I would wind up. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take your questions, or if there are any suggestions, anything to add on, it's open for you. That's it from my side. I'm happy to take questions.
If anybody has any questions, you can ask now.
So, could you explain about Google Glass?
Okay. Google Glass is where you get a feel. See, for example, you want to visit, let's say, a place in Europe. Now, Google Glass would make you get a feel of, without even going there. It gives you an experience, a sort of a visual treat within, within in the glass itself. It's a blend of virtual reality kind of an experience that you have. Or for instance, if you have to go to a place, like search a location, you can navigate in the glass itself. The glass shows you where to go. It gives instruction how to where to drive, at which place you get the petrol, how far is a workshop. All of those details gets visible in the glass itself. Yeah, so it's like you can do the Google search wearing a glass, and it gives you voice commands. It gives I mean, in fact, there was another, I'm forgetting the name of that that company. You don't even have to give voice command. You just think what the time is. Google Glass would, in your glass it appears, it's let's say 3:39 now. and what date is, you just think about it, it would appear. And that's, I mean, I want you to, I'm just trying to simplify, but I want you to go back and read and understand.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, you can ask any question. Anything, if I'm not saying.
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
a brief summary on principles of surveillance capitalism.
Okay, principles of surveillance capitalism. 1 minute. I'll just open that slide so that it becomes easier for you to take note as well. There are 3 fundamental principles. One is economies of scale. I'll open that slide, then it becomes 1 minute. So economic principles of surveillance capitalism. See, more quality of data, better the prediction. That's what the economies of scale is. Yeah. For example, if Google collects very precise data about me, almost every, like my entire day timing, what time I wake up, what time I go to washroom, what time I have my breakfast, from where I have my, from A to Z, if they are able to collect, and the quality of the data that they get is very precise, they'll be in a position to make a better prediction. Like if I have done this today, there is high possibility that I might repeat this pattern and would continue going to such and such restaurants to have my breakfast tomorrow and day after. Yeah. So it's about more quantity of data, larger quantity of data, as much as Google can collect, or any other data manipulation or data collection companies can collect. The assumption is they can make better predictions. That's about economies of scale. The second is economies of scope. It's not just large amount of data, but large varieties of data. It can be my picture, my video, my travel plans, my mobile connection details, my address, or my education, everything about a person, different varieties of data, because all of these are interrelated. My social status, my political stance, my views on the government, my opinion that I write, and if all of those data they have in hand, varieties of data they have, easily one can make a prediction of how a person would behave had there been a situation similar to it. So it helps in better predictions. Yeah. So it's about more variety. The first is about more quantity, is about larger chunk of data. Second is more variety of data. And the third is, if you get these information, the data, when it gets processed, becomes an information, you can actually use the same data to modify a person's behavior. For example, if you have been repeatedly going to the same restaurant, and Google has the information that this is a person who goes repeatedly to X restaurant, I might get a message from Google or another company, another restaurant in Calicut, to which Google has sent the details, and that restaurant might send me a more discount than the other restaurant where I'm regularly going, which means it might help the Y restaurant to custom design a marketing message to me. And seeing this discount, if I go to, instead of X restaurant, if I go to Y restaurant, I mean, the purpose is met. My behavior is changed. My regular or my regular restaurant visit is shifted to another restaurant, yeah, my breakfast from where I'm having. So they have succeeded in modifying my behavior. So that's the economies of action. Modification of behavior to desired commercial outcome is the third aspect. So more quantity, more varied data, which helps in modifying somebody's behavior, is what the economies of economic principles of surveillance capitalism is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Other questions? We can. It can be anything on the topics that. Yes, yes.
Yes. I can be.
Hello, I can't hear you.
What are the various areas where can be used?
Voice is not audible. You can type your question. If your network is poor, you can type your question.
Sir, what are the various areas where artificial intelligence can be used?
Okay, areas where artificial AI can be applied. Think about areas it cannot be applied. I mean, everywhere. I told you in the discussion that doctors are losing job because there it is getting replaced. Accountants are losing job, it is getting replaced. A chartered account, I mean, let's say, which are the other jobs? Teachers, I told you about Indus International School. So imagine any profession. See, there is an interesting report, McKinsey's a report in December 2017. December 2017, job gained, job loss. I hope that is the title of the report, which says that by 2030, 400 million jobs, current jobs, will get automated, will get replaced by technology. And that includes almost all the jobs, which includes teachers, factory workers, or so. I would say the imagination is only the limit. I mean, almost every job is likely to get replaced.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. One question is it possible to avoid surveillance? Okay. That's a good question. See, there are lots of things. See, there are lots of things that we can actually practice. Now, so many of us, we switch on the navigation. Why should we switch on navigation 24/7? Why can't you switch off when you actually don't need it? I mean, there are small things that you can do. And as I said, in Amazon, you can switch off your search history. That option is there. How many of us do that? You just switch off. In Google, you can switch off auto suggestion. Now, the other day, I was sending a mail to my colleague, and then while I started typing, the rest of the sentence came automatically. I mean, they started giving me suggestions, but there is an option to switch off that. So can we try to understand such things and start practicing those? I mean, that's one of the ways in which you can minimize. I'm not saying you can completely avoid surveillance, but you could actually minimize if you're careful about a lot of things. And as I said, youth, a lot of young people are deleting Facebook. I mentioned about the delete Facebook movement in US. Social media platforms are getting deleted. WhatsApp people are avoiding. I know I have a professor, and he still uses that. I mean, of course, it's not always feasible, but he rarely switch on the WhatsApp. So see, there are small things which can be done to minimize the surveillance, but as you said, yeah, it's hard because everything You see, we can't, as a citizen, we are supposed to follow what the government says, government and power. And if they ask us to link Aadhaar for getting a gas subsidy, we have to do it. But then later on, when they say that we are stopping the subsidy, we have to go by that too. So there are certain things we can't avoid. We have to go with the flow, with whatever comes from the people in power. But there are a lot of other things which, if we are conscious about, if we are cautious, we can avoid. Minimize surveillance. Well, are there more questions?
I need to change. Sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Method between statistical artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence.
I didn't hear that question properly, sorry. Can you just type your question, because your voice was breaking?
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you completely talked about the difficulties that we are getting affected by this tech giants.
Yes.
But at the same time, there is also very good life it leads to us.
I'm not denying the fact. But
Yeah, it's also making the life easy.
yes, but it comes with a cost. I mean, I hope you remember a slide. Everything free that you get comes with a cost, comes with a price. That's the point. See, we think that mobile phone has actually made our life easier. Of course, there are positives to it. Now, you can give a call to any person on any part of the globe, provided he has a good network connectivity. But just imagine, if you don't have a network connectivity, that is one problem. If your mobile doesn't have a charge, that is another problem. If you are in a place where you don't have a Wi-Fi, that is the third problem. Now, every convenience comes with its own demerits, or probably its own additions to the problems. So that's the point. I was emphasizing more on the I was emphasizing more on the negative aspect of it, because I wanted to plant a seed of thought that our privacy is slowly and gradually taken away by a lot of corporates, big giants, and our thought process is getting manipulated. Our decisions are getting manipulated by. Maybe to emphasize that, I had spoken more on a negative note.
Yeah, okay, thank you, sir. But it should be regulated, but it shouldn't be avoided.
Yes, I'm also forgot to mention that India in 2018 they had come up with a law. See, there are movements like forgetting the past. 1 minute, I'll just take that slide and read out exactly what the law is. There is a law which had come into practice in 2000. In 2013, the right to be forgotten, that is a law. European Union General Data Protection Regulation passed a law in which every person has the right for privacy. I mean, if without your consent, if the companies are collecting data, you have a right to go file a suit against them. Similarly, in India, in 2018, there is a bill which is passed, Personal Data Protection Bill. Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee they had introduced a new right called the right to be forgotten, which refers to the ability of an individual to limit, delink, delete, or correct the disclosure of personal information, which means you now have the right to limit what you're sharing in the cyber physical spaces, or delete what you're sharing. It's not that companies can just like that take all the data without your knowledge and consent. Yeah. If you're interested, you go back and read Personal Data Protection Bill of 2018, which was by B.N. Sri Krishna Committee in India. They followed the suit of 2018 European Union General Data Protection Regulation Act. Yep. So currently we have the right, but how many of us are aware of that? I mean, that's the question. Because of positive, see, this session normally I take for almost 3 to 4 hours, but I had to do it in a rush. A lot of things which I wanted to cover, I haven't, but sorry for that. But these are things which I had missed out. Personal Data Protection Bill is there, which if you go back and read, you would understand what your right is in terms of saving your privacy.
Okay, thank you, sir.
My question is mentioned in chat box.
Somebody is trying to speak, but I'm not able to hear anything.
So my question is chat box. Go to chat box. Hello. Hello.
Are there more questions? If there are, you can either unmute and ask or type it in your chat box. Okay, it's been almost 2 hours. In that case, we'll wind up. We can continue this conversation if you're interested. Yeah. So I'll just leave my, let's say, I hope the screen is visible. I'm leaving my contact details here, my email or my phone number is there. You could feel free to contact me anytime. Let's stay connected. Thank you once again, Raghavan sir, my professor at Arts College, Samir sir, and other organizers of this event, all the participants who was there online. Thank you for this opportunity. Let's stay connected.
Thank you, sir. Next, I invite Bashaira Bashir from 3rd BBA to deliver vote of thanks.
Respected and most distinguished Chief Guest of the day, Professor Rishikesh Sir, respected Principal Professor A.K. Abdul Hamid, our beloved HOD Dr. Raghavan, and honorable professors and my dear friends. It seems to be a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this seminar a very resounding success. First of all, I would like to give my hearty vote of thanks to our Chief Guest, Mr. Rishikesh, for gracing today's seminar. Thank you, sir, for making an excellent presentation and making this seminar a very meaningful and an interesting one. I would like to express our deep gratitude to the Principal Hamid sir for his presence in this seminar. I would also thank our beloved HOD Raghavan sir for his guidance and moral support. I'm happy to express a vote of thanks to our teachers and has made this seminar a grand success. Finally, I thank the wonderful students who have turned up in such a great numbers, not only from our department, but also from other departments of the institution. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Once again, I thank all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you.